a change on Tennessee's roster. We didn't really see this one coming. At least I didn't. We will get Caleb's thoughts. What the H?
What the? What was he thinking?
Release the hounds.
The Dave Hooker Show.
Keep cool.
A presentation of OffTheHookSports.com.
So we have a young man entering the transfer portal, one that I did not think would happen. What can you tell us about some movement in Tennessee's football roster, Caleb Calhoun?
Yeah, so defensive lineman Deshaun Terry has entered the portal. He had 6 tackles for a loss over the past 2 years, 3 sacks, 35 tackles. Has been a pretty solid rotational linebacker. He transferred to Tennessee from Kansas, was one of Josh Heupel's first transfer signees when he first took over, and now he's in the portal. I think he was a solid rotational player. He's the type of rotational player you want, but I think this is a sign of the success Tennessee is having at defensive line among other players more than anything. I think what happened was Deshaun Terry, I think he realized he was going to be the odd man out after spring ball. I think he waited until now because I think they say you're not supposed to do this. I believe they do. I believe kids do this. I think that he was taking my advice and making sure that he had a landing spot before he decided to pull the trigger and enter the portal. And so my guess is you're going to see him land somewhere pretty quickly after this.
Yeah, and it may just be Kansas, right? Could he end up at Kansas?
Back at Kansas?
Yeah, I mean, I've already seen that possibly perpetuated by a Kansas website that wants that to happen, but I guess that's a possibility. He doesn't, to me, have the pedigree just to open up the door, and obviously doesn't have the pedigree to call Alabama or Georgia, right, and say I'm coming, or Ohio State, Michigan, any of those schools. But could he call? Does he have the gravitas to call a Kentucky or a South Carolina? Or I'm trying to think of another team that's kind of on the verge of competing for a national championship. I don't think he's we call it anywhere, somewhere, nowhere guys. He's a somewhere guy. I don't think he's an anywhere guy that could just call up anybody and say, hey, I'm showing up in Tuscaloosa, right?
I agree. He's a somewhere guy. Dave, you've talked about him a lot, and we haven't seen him take that next step, but we've talked about his potential. Could this be a sign of Elijah Simmons finally being what we think he can be?
It could be, but if it is, you bring up that point. It's a great point. It could be Elijah Simmons, but here's the other thing: do you ever have depth on the defensive line and offensive line with the transfer portal? I mean, there are guys. I mean, there was a time where Albert Haynesworth was depth. I know that sounds crazy right now, but he wasn't the first guy to run out on the field, and being able to play extensively in a backup role helped him become one of the greatest defensive tackles of our generation at one point. But he was depth at one point. So if I'm a school, if I'm a coach, I look at this guy in particular in Terry, and I think that's the guy you don't want to lose, because by the end of September, if a guy goes down or he plays at a high level, he could be your starter. Yet Billy Ratliff played in place of Jeff Coleman as our Celebrate 98 series goes on, and we've got a lot of people lined up this week. Billy Ratliff played in place of Jeff Coleman at times because Jeff was the older, more established player. Billy Ratliff doesn't make that play against Arkansas if Jeff Coleman doesn't look over and say, Billy, I need you to step in here. I'm gassed. So that's the part that concerns me. You want at least 4 defensive tackles, more like 6, to enter the season in the SEC, because a couple of guys are going to fall by the wayside injury-wise.
Dave, I think they have that. I think they have 6. I'm going down the roster now. Let's just name
even without Terry.
Even without Terry. Okay, so let's name the go-tos real quick. There is Kurott Garland, the experienced veteran of the group. There is Omari Thomas, the potential superstar of the group.
Let me get what Hank Kingsley thinks about all these guys. Yeah, so if they're ready to be starters or they're ready to be productive players, by the way, here we go.
Hey now.
Both those guys are.
All right, and then here's third, also ready to be a starter, Bryson Eason.
Hey now.
Agreed.
So we're already halfway there. All right, let's just name the other guys that we're talking about that could be on here. Tyree West.
That's a barely hey
Hey
now.
now.
But I'm already at, but we're talking already at 4th on the roster. Now, the guy I'm high on, who I think pushed Jordan Phillips into the transfer portal back in December because of what he did when he arrived early, a true freshman, Nathan Robinson.
That's crazy.
I'm not ready to go there with Nathan Robinson yet.
You're not ready to go there with Nathan Robinson.
You may change my mind in 3 months, a year, or whenever, but I'm not going there yet. That you would look at him and say, it's Alabama this weekend. Simmons, West, these other guys are hurt. You got to start. I mean, they have to fit that mold. It's not just taking snaps.
So what you're saying is we're still stuck at 4 then. Okay, I'll go 5. Arizona State transfer, norman-lott.
Hey now.
I'll give you that one. All right, they have 5. So they may have 6.
Also,
They may have 6. They have 5. All
they
right.
may have. I'm not even done. Elijah Simmons.
Oh, you didn't even mention Simmons. All right. Maybe a little optimistic, but we'll see.